In this lecture, I will discuss two very popular women philosophers from the Upanishadic times. Before that, a few words about the position occupied by women in ancient India. Ordinarily, girls were no doubt less welcome than boys, but daughters were always accepted and treated well. There were parents who performed religious rituals for the good luck of getting learned and capable daughters. Girls were educated like boys, and after performing their upanayana, that is the thread ceremony, they were sent to famous teachers or centers of education for acquiring knowledge and becoming well versed in Vedic studies. After passing through a period of brahmacharya, they were married at a fairly early age, normally 16 or 17. They had an effective voice in the selection of their partners. The title Brahmavadini was given to women who dedicated their lives to spiritualism and gaining knowledge and of course, the study of the Vedas. Some of them remained unmarried and lived an independent life. They were the women sages and were respected as philosophers, teachers, and scholars. I will start with Gargi, a prominent female philosopher, a great debater, and an accomplished scholar. She was the daughter of sage Vachaknu. She was honored and recognized as one of the Navratnas in the court of King Janaka of Mithila. Gargi is mentioned in the Griha Sutra of the Rig Veda, and her philosophical views also find mention in the Chandogya Upanishad. But she is most famous for her debate with the sage Yajnavalkya, which is found in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Actually, she confronted sage Yajnavalkya in the debate in King Janaka's court, until the sage, flustered and disturbed by her questions, threatened her, saying, "Ask not too much, Gargi, so that your head may not fall from your body. Truly, concerning divinity, one must not ask too much. You ask too much, Gargi, ask not too much." Although she was silenced, but she was not defeated in the debate. She was his strongest challenger, and this is quite evident from the dialogue between the two, that she was proficient in the complex philosophies of the four Vedas, and which is why she, understanding the whole discourse given by Yajnavalkya, formulated her arguments in the most rigorous fashion. Let me just give you the background. Actually, King Janaka organized a Rajasuya Yajna, where he invited all the learned scholars, sages, and kings to participate. Now, King Janaka was a learned man himself and was greatly interested in spiritual matters. And so, he thought of arranging a competition among the assembled group of elite scholars and selecting the one with the most in-depth knowledge about Brahman, and declared that the winner would be rewarded with a lavish prize of 1,000 cows, each one adorned with 10 grams of gold. Interestingly, sage Yajnavalkya was so confident about his victory that he ordered his disciples to start taking the prize home immediately after the announcement was made. Of course, this angered many scholars present there, yet none of them felt confident enough to debate with him. In that whole assembly of sages and scholars, only 8 stood up to Yajnavalkya's challenge, and Gargi was one of them. And she was the only woman in the group. Yajnavalkya received questions from the 7 other sages, including the king's own priest. But Yajnavalkya kept offering answers to all of them, and so each one of them failed. Then it was Gargi's turn to pose questions to him. The debate between Gargi and Sage Yajnavalkya is mentioned in full detail in chapter 3, section 6 of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The subject matter under discussion is the ultimate reality and what pervades it. Gargi asks Yajnavalkya a series of questions which agitates Yajnavalkya, and he warns Gargi that if she doesn't stop asking questions, then her head will shatter and fall apart, as she was going beyond her capacity to know. Of course, Gargi was not going beyond her knowledge, because she re-enters the debate even more confident after the mortal threat she got from Yajnavalkya. And this time she addresses everyone present in the assembly saying, Brahmana Bhagavanto Hanta Aham Imam Dvau Prashnau Prakshyami Tau Chen Me Vakshyati Na Vai Jatu Yushmakam Imam Kaschid Brahmyodam Jeta. Meaning, revered Brahmins, I am going to ask him 2 questions. If he can answer them for me, none of you can ever defeat him in describing Brahman. Then she turns towards Yajnavalkya in an aggressive, warrior-like mode of speaking and says, as a warrior son of Kashi or of the Videha might rise up against you, having strung his unstrung bow and having taken 2 enemy-piercing arrows in his hand, even so, O Yajnavalkya, have I risen up against you with 2 questions. Answer me these. That, O Yajnavalkya, which is above the sky, that which is below the earth, that which is between these 2, sky and earth, that which people call past, present and the future, across what is that woven that pervades it? To this question, Yajnavalkya responds by saying that it is across space or ether that all are woven together. All is pervaded by ether. Gargi praises Yajnavalkya for answering the first question and asks him to prepare himself for the next. But when she asks the second question, it becomes clear that the praise that she showered on him was just a taunt. Her second question was, that which is above the sky, that which is below the earth, that which is between these 2, sky and earth, that which people call past, present and the future, across what is that woven that pervades it? Do you realize her second question is exactly the same as her first question? Why is Gargi doing this? Is she being sarcastic here? Or is it that she is not happy with Yajnavalkya's answer? And in her own way telling him to concentrate and answer the question. And finally, Yajnavalkya answers the way Gargi wants him to answer, as it was not an ordinary question, but was regarding the nature of Brahman. This time, Yajnavalkya says, the seers, O Gargi, call him Akshara, the immutable and imperishable reality. He is neither gross nor fine, neither short nor long, neither hot nor cold, neither light nor dark, neither of the nature of air nor of the nature of ether. He is without relations. He is without taste or smell, without eyes, ears, speech, mind, vigor, breath, mouth. He is without measure. He is without inside or outside. He enjoys nothing. Nothing enjoys him. At the command of that reality, O Gargi, the sun and moon hold their courses. Heaven and earth keep their positions. Moments, hours, days and nights, fortnights and months, seasons and years, all follow their paths. Rivers issuing from the snowy mountains flow on, some eastward, some westward, others in other directions. He, O Gargi, who in this world, without knowing this reality, offers oblations, performs sacrifices, practices austerities, even though for many thousands of years gains little. His offerings and practices are perishable. He, O Gargi, who departs this life without knowing the imperishable, is pitiable. But he, O Gargi, who departs this life knowing this, is wise. This reality, O Gargi, is unseen, but is the seer, is unheard, but is the hearer, is unthinkable, but is the thinker, is unknown, but is the knower. There is no seer but he. There is no hearer but he. There is no thinker but he. There is no knower but he. In Akshara, verily, O Gargi, the ether is woven, warp and woof. So, Yajnavalkya realizes and acknowledges that Gargi is a true scholar, is a wise person, is a Brahmagyata. And so he modifies his response when he is asked the same question for the second time. The fact that she hears the entire discourse, participates in it, implies that she is capable of understanding the imperishable, the immutable Brahman. In fact, she is also superior to the other challengers, as she is the only one not silenced immediately after Yajnavalkya's answer. Throughout, she remains an active participant, and even in the end, after she gets her desired answer, she keeps the ball in her court, as she is the one to say the last word. And she addresses the assembly, saying, "Revered Brahmins, you should consider yourselves blessed if you get off with bowing before him. No one will defeat Yajnavalkya in describing Brahman." And then she goes silent. Actually, with her concluding remarks, she positions her own authority with Yajnavalkya's ability to defeat the other Brahmins, indirectly situating herself on the winning side of the debate. Consequently, despite not winning the debate, Gargi manages to put her own frame around her encounter and to align herself with the victor. Furthermore, she is the one who pronounces Yajnavalkya as the superior orator. Although Gargi does not defeat Yajnavalkya, her ability to recognize his superiority over the other Brahmins suggests that she has the authority, or at least claims the authority, to pronounce the winner. Her whole personality, her debating methodology is all so impressive. The way she speaks, the conducts herself in the assembly, constructs her arguments, uses an aggressive mode of speech, then employs sarcasm, and in the end addresses the whole audience and pronounces the victor. That was Gargi. Now it is time to discuss our second woman philosopher, Maitreyi. She was the daughter of sage Mitra, who was a learned Vedic scholar. He was a minister in the court of King Janaka. While growing up, Maitreyi was in complete awe of her maternal aunt Gargi, who, as you have just learnt, was an erudite Vedic scholar. Probably this thirst for knowledge arose in Maitreyi due to the influence of Gargi on her. Once Gargi took Maitreyi to the yagna ceremony organized by King Janaka, where she witnessed the unsurpassable wisdom and sharp intellect of sage Yajnavalkya, who was on this spree of defeating one scholar after another in the matters of spiritualism. She at once had a strong desire to have him as her husband and learn from him the intricacies of the Vedic, the Upanishadic teachings and the Shastras. Her wish got fulfilled and she became the wife of the great sage Yajnavalkya, who himself extolled women so much as to call them embodiments of all divine virtues on earth. Maitreyi was one of the few female philosophers who had a command over Brahma Vidya. She used to take part in the controversies regarding the invisible, the imperceptible world beyond, and displayed wonderful knowledge on great religious matters. That Maitreyi could be capable of standing with men in discussions on abstruse metaphysical subjects is important evidence that indicates that so far as the attainment of religious wisdom is concerned, women were by no means lagging behind men. The wives were partners to their husbands in ritual practices also. No one else could take the place of a wife in the performance of rituals and sacrifices. One of the main technical requirements for being a sacrificer is that he must be a householder, grihastha. He must be married. Not only that, but the presence and participation of his wife is required to all solemn rituals. Sacrificer's wife, Patni in Sanskrit, is a structural role in ritual with particular duties and activities that cannot ordinarily be performed by anyone else. At least in the ages represented by the Upanishads, the religious status occupied by women was that of equality with men, and certainly not of inferiority, which it became in the later ages. Maitreyi was in fact the younger wife of Yajnavalkya. His first wife was Katyayani. Katyayani was conversant with Stri Prajna, the knowledge required by women to keep the household going, which would include not just taking care of the requirements of food and clothing, but also taking over the priestly duties of her husband in his absence. And perhaps in contrast to Maitreyi, she always, cared most for her position as a wife. Although there are faint references of Maitreyi in the scriptures, however, all that we do know about her is sufficient to make us aware of her intelligence, eloquence, knowledge, and of course her leading a life of virtue. Direct references of Maitreyi are found in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where she appears twice in almost similar dialogues. In both the dialogues, it is explained that sage Yajnavalkya decides to abandon the worldly ties and spend the rest of his life in the forest, as he had approached the last phase of his life. So he puts this plan of his in front of Maitreyi, and the dialogue goes like this. Yajnavalkya tells Maitreyi that he plans to leave this state of life, that is the life of a householder, and for that purpose he wishes to make a settlement of property or wealth between her and Katyayani. This decision of her husband agitates Maitreyi, as she was least interested in Yajnavalkya's wealth. She asks him, if this whole of earth, full of wealth, becomes hers, would she become immortal? Yajnavalkya, in reply to this, says that if a person is opulent, he can be happy like those in the world with their worldly, wealthy possessions. But immortality cannot be attained by wealth. Maitreyi exclaims as to what she should do with that by which she does not become immortal, and wants him to tell her about the means by which one can attain immortality. Yajnavalkya was aware that his wife was intelligent. She had these qualities of inquisitiveness, curiosity, and therefore he explains to her not only the nature of true love, but also the greatness of the absolute self, the nature of its existence, the way of attaining infinite knowledge and immortality. Now, this suggests that the transmission, and this point is very important. Now, the transmission, what this whole conversation suggests is that the transmission of knowledge was not restricted to father and son, as is generally believed, that before his death the father would perform a ceremony in which he would pass on his knowledge to his son, and by doing this he would achieve immortality. Yajnavalkya imparts this knowledge to his wife instead, and thus he counters those who believe that a man can achieve immortality only through his son. So, coming back to Maitreyi, while Yajnavalkya is explaining to Maitreyi about immortality, she expresses her confusion and requests clarification. If you read this dialogue, you will realize that she is in fact raising an important question. And when she says that she is confused, it does not mean that she lacks understanding. Rather, it proves Yajnavalkya's disorderly explanation. Anyway, after clarifying his position, Yajnavalkya takes sannyas, and Maitreyi, unlike Katyayani, obtains from him what she actually wanted, part of his spiritual knowledge. Ultimately, Maitreyi leaves all her material possessions to Katyayani and becomes an ascetic. So we can say that women in the Upanishadic times received formal educations, they were considered equals, they could follow their intellectual pursuits. This I say because the wisdom, scholarship and strength displayed by Gargi and Maitreyi wouldn't be possible in an intellectual vacuum. So, women enjoyed freedom and respect. However, as I mentioned in my previous lecture also, that the situation of women drastically changed in the later periods. Of course, we do have few examples of wise and learned women and their spirited discourses with sages and scholars in the Smriti and the epic period also, but some decline in their position is easily noticeable. Gradually, when this Upanayana tradition was discontinued and women were discouraged to receive any formal education, they remained confined in their roles of subservient wives. A lot more can be said, but I will end my lecture here. Thank you so much.